Hey, what's happening? I'm Claudio, and today I'm going to be making a workbench. Since we moved into this house, I've been scavenging for space and tools to complete every job. It's time to get organized, so stick around. Let's make it now. I started my build in Sketchup to lay out what the bench should look like and where it should be located. Mocking this up takes a little extra time, but could save you big in the end. I added the permanent items and then placed the bench in the space. I liked how it fit, so I added some tools in the model to get an idea of the finished product. I felt like it was safe to move forward, so I created a detailed model of the workbench for exact dimensions and an accurate cut list. Before I could even get started building the workbench, I needed to clear out my tools and the existing bench. This bench that I'm disassembling was built long ago by the original homeowner. It was scrapped together mostly by 1x material, so it came apart easy enough. I left a section of the original bench for the miter saw to make all the cuts. I set up a stop block system with a step stool and a chair. I printed up a SketchUp sheet to make sure I had all the correct dimensions. There were a lot of cuts, so it took a considerable amount of time. It's fun to see something you design on the computer become something tangible right in front of you. Some of the leg assembly pieces require a notch to be cut out. I measured the front and back edge with a ruler and then used a scrap piece of 2x4 for the exact height. I raised up the blade to the correct height and then began cutting. Using a scrap piece of 2x4 against the fence, I cut the first edge. I could now make a bunch of passes until I hit the fence. The thin segments of wood chip out easily, but it's still a little rough. I used the table saw blade to glide the pieces back and forth to make them smooth. I marked out the boards, attached a countersink to the bit, and drilled everything out. With everything cut and notched, I could start building the leg assemblies. There were 2 sets per assembly and 7 assemblies total. This set was a double stack that connects the longest run in the workbench. I drilled out holes on the cross members to attach the leg assemblies. Again, using a scrap 2x4 gave me the exact dimension I needed to half the board. Now I could screw in the upper cross members connecting the 2 sets. I drilled some pocket holes into the lower cross members of the leg assemblies. Pocket screws were the easiest way to attach them without using a 4-inch screw from the side. Once all the leg assemblies were done, I could attach the long stringers, completing the frame outline. I measured out the total inside distance of the stringer and divided it by the number of braces I wanted. This gave me an even spacing for all the braces. I countersank and then screwed 2 3-inch long screws into each side of the braces to secure them. I found it a lot easier using a clamp to hold the braces in place before driving in the screws. Once the first section was done, I repeated the process for the second and third bench sections. Now that the bench frames were complete, I grabbed 3/4-inch plywood and cut it down to fit the tops and shelves. To make cutting down the full sheets of plywood easier, I brought over a section of the workbench. Although not perfect, it beats cutting them down on the floor. I drilled and countersunk screws into the tops and shelves to secure the plywood. I only drilled down on the frame where there was a cross brace below. To protect the plywood work surface, I skinned the tops with an extra layer of 1/2-inch MDF. It's a lot cheaper to replace the MDF down the road than the plywood. I secured the MDF sheets the same way as I did the plywood, just offsetting the screws by a couple of inches. Once all the tops were on, I used my router with a chamfer bit to ease the sharp edge. This will also help the MDF from marring and peeling during use. To avoid movement over time, I decided to attach the workbenches to the wall. I used a stud finder and then drilled in some long screws through the stringer into the studs. My garage floor slopes down towards the door. I had to shim up the sides of the bench in order to keep it all level. The miter saw goes between these 2 sections of the bench, but is lowered down to make the bed of the saw and the bench top the same height. I attached these stringers using pocket screws. Now that the platform was done, I could cut the Mdf shelf for the saw to sit on. In order for the shelf to sit flush against the wall, I had to notch out a corner for the sprinkler wires to run. Once it was cut out, the shelf fit perfectly. For some extra support under the saw, I ran 2 more braces. Since I couldn't get to the back side of the bench, I attached them using pocket screws. The front I could just drill and screw directly into the stringer using some 3-inch screws. I attached the top the same way I did the others and then chamfered the edge. I used a chisel to reach the 2 sides I couldn't get with the router. Well, for now the bench is done. It's functional enough to store my tools and to get working on other projects. I have a lot of upgrades I want to make down the road, dealing with usability and storage and organization. Subscribe below so you won't miss any of my future projects. You can follow me on social media at Make It Now channel and find me on my website at makeitnow.tv. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.